Hello and welcome back to Insemination. My name is Laura, your chaotic sperm donor baby of the podcast world, and I'm really excited for this episode. I'm really I know I say that, but guys, I'm really excited for this one. We have the amazing Chelsea Devantez in the house, who is donor conceived, also a comedian, and was the head writer for The Problem with Jon Stewart. And she is here to tell us her story about her donor conception and the fact that she just wrote this amazing book that has chapters detailing her story about being donor conceived. It's fucking hysterical. We're going to talk about this. This is just so exciting. I'm filming this intro after we literally just filmed the episode, and I'm telling you, it's amazing. You have to. I'm so excited. But let's do a little bit of housekeeping before we start. If you're not subscribed to this podcast, please do that. Leave a review, like it, share it, do all the things that kind of crap helps. Also, remember that we film this entire podcast, so it is on YouTube, available for you to watch. Also, remember, I'm a stand-up comic, pew. So I have lots of shows coming up, and I'm very excited about them. They're all on my website, www.laurahighfive.com. Come see a show. And then when you're there, like, oh, that was a cough. And then when you're there, like, be like, hey, Laura, I follow you on TikTok. I follow you on Instagram. I follow your podcast, whatever. And then we can have some fun times, because I have connected with so many wonderful people that way. And it's so lovely. And yeah, and let's just get started, because this is just such a fun episode. Okay, guys, come meet Chelsea. Well, welcome to the podcast, Chelsea. We have some serious big boots coming into the house today. Thank you so much for making the time to talk.
I'm so honored to talk to you, and the work you've done has been so inspirational and meaningful to me. You're such an incredible figure in the community, so I'm very excited to be here.
Okay, I'm like kind of blushing because people don't understand kind of like how big of a deal you are. I love when I love it when like a lady flexes. So would you please kind of flex a little bit and just tell the kids who you are and a little bit about your resume, so they can understand why I'm sort of fangirling right now.
That's really nice of you. Would love to list my credits like a 2012 girl boss. My name is Chelsea Devantez. I'm a TV writer. I'm a comedian. I'm a filmmaker. Sometimes I'm in stuff. And I just wrote a book. It's called I Shouldn't Be Telling You This. I sent a copy to Laura. It's a memoir. It's a comedy gal memoir.
This is my first free book from somebody. I'm so
really
excited. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, I tell people the book is half comedy gal memoir, half absolutely harrowing trauma, and you got to want both at the same time. So holding both those things, that's the tone of my book. And I was Jon Stewart's head writer. He gave me my first job in TV on another show, and I've written on some other shows like Girls Five Eva and Not Dead Yet and Bless This Mess, among some others. And I have a podcast called Glamorous Trash, where we read and recap female celebrity memoirs in a really thoughtful way.
Okay, so now everybody understands like why I'm kind of going like sort of like spitzing right now, just going like, oh my God, like this is really cool.
No, right now everyone's going, Chelsea Handler? Oh, no, not her, huh? Well, I guess Laura likes this girl.
I do. I mean, I'm sorry, but you worked on The Problem with Jon Stewart. I mean, okay, yes, we're gonna get into donor conception, but like, what is that day like for you?
So, I mean, well, when being the head writer is a very different job than being just a writer on the show. And so that day was, I don't know, it's like 7 a.m. and you're rewriting, looking over stuff and making assignments and making the plan for the day, but also doing a lot of like show running things, of like everything from like vacation, time off management to mental health management to this edit's not working. This cast member doesn't want to do it. Call this person so they can come in. So it's like a lot of logical stuff and then a lot of creative stuff. And I mean, working there was incredible. My absolute dream job. I got to hire my dream staff.
I mean, that is the job. That's the job.
That's the job.
That's the job.
Yeah. And I got to do it, and it was phenomenal.
That's incredible. Oh my gosh. It is so fucking cool. And the fact that we had a donor conceived person as the head writer. We are fucking everywhere, guys.
That's right. Maybe our dads were doctors and they were smart. Who knows?
Who the fuck knows? But we're in charge. We're taking over. The industry doesn't know how many of us they've made, but we're fucking everywhere.
I know. Just statistically, we're around you.
We are. I mean, I people always ask me, they're like, how many donor conceived people exist? I'm like, we don't fucking know. There's no registry.
Didn't track us. They burned our records. I say,
Typically burned our records.
I mean, truly. Yeah. And LOL, no one took the time to burn it. I don't even believe they put that care into it. I think they just like never had them in the first place. And then they were like, oh no, there was a fire.
Are you told there was a fire?
I can't even, they're like, what are you talking about? And because it was through a university. And they're like, what program? But also it's like, yeah, I'm like calling all these people who work there now, asking about this program that these two psychos were running in the 80s to do these experiments. And I can find the papers they wrote off of the studies they did. They were studying spermatogenesis. I still have no idea if I'm saying that right, but I can find like the 16 papers they wrote from the program they ran, but I couldn't get the university to acknowledge that they had the program, only because it's like, you know, I worked admin at my university. If someone called and was like, hello, was there a program in the 80s that made me? I'd be like, I don't know.
I don't fucking know.
I don't know. Yeah.
Did you, this is again, and this is me and my like little comic brain of in terms of dark comedy, but do you know, like, so obviously we know that they say like our papers went up in a fire. Do you know what other natural disaster they blamed the loss of papers on?
I'm gonna guess flood.
Katrina.
Yeah,
they blame right. Katrina. That is like, way to take one of like the most horrific natural disasters in our country, and only the fertility industry would be like, an opportunity.
Yes, and Gypsy Rose Blanchard's mom,
yes,
who took the opportunity to then be like, her birth certificate is gone and keep her, I think, 4 years younger than her actual age. So criminals just love a flood.
They love a flood. And way to go, like little cryo banks. You have the same kind of mindset as fucking Gypsy Rose Blanchard's mom. Like, way to go. Like,
not a category you want to be in.
100%. Yeah, let's stay in that one. All right. So we are here, obviously, to have some giggles, but to talk about your fantastic book. I shouldn't be telling you this. And when does this go on sale?
June 4th. So from this moment, we're recording like 4 days from now. It's a Tuesday, and it's actually already available in Barnes and Nobles. I think they just got the book in and people put it on shelves being like, no one will care, right? And
Barnes and Nobles, not Barnes and Noble?
Barnes and Noble. Did I say Barnes and Nobles plural? Well, I meant Barnes and Nobles across the country. Multiple Barnes and Nobles.
Wrong this whole time. I just had to go, oh no.
No. I meant multiple stores have had it, and people have sent me pictures of them buying it on the internet a full week before I thought it would be in people's hands.
Oh, that's so cool. How does that feel?
It feels amazing. It feels scary. It feels incredible. It feels like being on a roller coaster and you're kind of at the tippy top.
Yeah.
And then you realize that like you've already been on the ride for 4 days and you didn't realize it because the book was out.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that is fantastic. Now, this book obviously has some stuff about being donor conceived, but if you had to sort of like, you know, give your elevator pitch for the book, how would you sort of sell this?
Yes. So I already did my comedy gal harrowing trauma warning / pitch. And then I would say that each chapter title is a different woman's name in my life, because very naturally in my life, women were always the center and they had such a huge impact on me. Some of the women are heroes, some of them are villains. But what are both those things? A leading role. And we do love women in leading roles. And so I go through the stories of my life, the most important things that happened to me, everything from finding out my dad wasn't my real dad to dating a magician. Are those two related? You know, read the book, find out for yourself. I imagine one impacted the other.
I was an amateur magician. Now I'm wondering, like, is
there a connection?
A sleight of hand?
Sleight of hand, wanting to find out what the tricks are. Yeah. And I talk about growing up poor with my mom in the Southwest and her husband's, and how I, you know, got into Hollywood, a best friendship breakup I had. So all these huge pillars of my life. And I also talk about this domestic violence thing that happened to me when I was very, very young. And that was actually the impetus for writing the book is I wanted to bring domestic violence stories into a new genre, comedy, not how they're usually talked about, but
But they
you and
should.
I yeah, you and I both agree on this. Like
Oh
when
yeah,
something is in the shadows and it's hushed and it's treated like it's too hot to touch, you don't want to talk about it and it's icky, there can be no change in culture.
exactly.
And we cannot recognize victims of domestic violence if we don't have any stories of it. And one genre that makes things more palatable is comedy. I am a comedian. I did live through this horrible thing, and I really wanted to write about it in a way that could bring a new perspective onto what these stories look like.
Absolutely. I mean, it's, it's you and I have talked about how comedy shines light into the darkest places. It makes it consumable, accessible. It doesn't feel like you're sitting there eating a plate full of vegetables.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
but yeah, no, I'm a big, I mean, that's, the whole basis for my TikTok account is that
Yeah.
like, hey, we're going to do this a little tongue in cheek. Like, I understand that, this is something that a lot of people take seriously and it's really hot and it's very emotionally charged, but it's like, we have to talk about it. And I think Jon Stewart has certainly led the way into proving that you wrap things up in a joke, people will listen.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
But let's dive into your book. So obviously you cover the donor conception in it, and it was you had a couple of quotes, and there's a specific quote that I would love to just read from it, really fast before we kind of dive into it that really hit me. And this is talking about finding out that your donor conceived. And you said, I'd liken the experience of finding out your donor conceived to emotional vertigo. The world flips upside down. You turn inside out. And every time you look in a mirror, you can no longer see a human staring back. My hands were no longer mine, and my reflection became a mistake. As I stared at myself, every molecule inside my body was suddenly a sneaky little bitch playing me for a fool. I am not I am not of the birds and the bees. I am of the turkey baster and and the jizz in a cup. I could have siblings I've never met. I could have hundreds. I have to start over as a fully formed person. Half of my identity has always been wrong. Half of my medical history has always been wrong. I may never know the truth about what's inside me. I'll never have legal right to learn who my father is. Every person I ever fuck could be my brother, cousin, or worse, my actual dad. I walked into the moment of discovery a normal human, and I walked out as an intruder to my own family. My humanity was stripped from me and replaced with a permanent aching. I am plagued to forever look for my biological father everywhere I go, all desperate eyed, veins straining at my temples, the grown ass version of a toddler lost in the mall. I have never ever seen that. I have never seen it more perfectly put on what it's like to feel donor conceived. That
Wow.
hit me so fucking hard. And I was like, every donor conceived person is going to read that and just go, oh shit, that's it.
That makes me so happy to hear because of course as more of us are coming out of the woodwork or finding out and we already have a job in the arts and we start to make stories about it, all you want is to represent your community well. And when there's so few of you out there doing that, the pressure to do it well is so high.
Yeah.
And so of course, and I know you feel this all the time. It's like you want to do right by everybody. You don't
Yeah.
want to get anything wrong. And yet I can really only speak to my specific experience. And that is how it felt for me. And to hear that's how it felt for you means a lot.
Oh my God. I mean, like, obviously, yes, and that's a blanket statement that, like, all donor conceived people, it's like, no, no, no. Like, okay, not every single one. Every
Yeah,
single
there's
one.
nuance.
No
There's
one,
nuance.
no one freak out in my comment section there. But I can say with some pretty good certainty that a lot of people are going to be sharing that and go, I mean, it's for the donor conceived community, it's worth it just for that fucking quote alone. But you have so many incredible quotes and incredible elements to your story. And I'd love to just dive into your story. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
so I know you were made in the 80s like myself. What year? What vintage are you?
86, 86, fresh out of the oven or
I was right behind
freezer,
you. I was
who's to say.
88. Yes, no,
Yeah,
we were like right after they started freezing sperm. I was a fresh sperm. Were you frozen or fresh?
I was fresh. Yeah. Fresh off the dick.
Fresh off the deck, right into the turkey baster.
Yeah. Yeah. And they really, from my mom's account of it, that was really the amazing new thing they were doing. Just how fresh it would be, was what they were playing around with.
Oh God, is Gwen Stefani on Goop gonna sell? Here's the freshest of sperm.
The freshest of sperm.
Harvested it fresh right off the dicks for you. Sunset was gleaming. It's all organic.
It's all organic. These dicks been eating kale. They've been on juice cleanses. Like, yeah. Yeah. So that was
meditating, thinking
absolutely
calm dick thoughts for years.
Yes. Yes. And they're all 6'4" and they went to Harvard.
Oh, absolutely. So you were from, as you said, a university, and they told your parents that it was a med student.
Yeah. They told my mom it was a medical student. And even more so, I mean, it still kind of hurts to realize how much of my body and brain still believes this. Cause I found out at 14. So I have had this information for half my life. 14, really?
Yeah, 14 as well.
It's a weird age to find out. I mean, all ages, honestly, besides if you find it from the jump, that's good. Any age after that, it gets weird. 14 is especially odd because you are finding out earlier than being an adult and being surprised. But especially for women, your identity maker years are like 11 to 17.
Puberty. And you're just like, sure, let's throw this into the fucking mix.
Yeah. Yeah. And your brain's not fully formed. You're trying to understand all this nuance. Also, let's go back. What year was I 14? I don't know. This is like 2000. Like this is, there's not, there's barely any information now. The internet wasn't even available to Google.
Yeah, we didn't have like our little Facebook groups or anything like that. We had nothing. We had nothing. When was the first? How old were you when you met your first other donor conceived person?
Wow, what an amazing question! Because I kept it a secret for a long time, and so actually, I know who it was. So I was told to keep it a secret after I found out, which also had a huge, huge impact on my life. Probably more than being donor conceived. The secret shaped me. Yeah. And I was on
so common. It's I hate how common it is, but
it's painful how common it is, which is also like, again, why I'm trying to be loud in my book, why I love your show. It's like, we've got to get the shame out of this industry. But I was sitting on my friend's porch and we both remember it. And we both remember the moment, but we don't remember how we got there. But I'm holding this secret. She's holding the secret. And somehow we had given off enough clues to each other with whatever live chat we were having with beers in our hands that we both realized that we were donor conceived and keeping it a secret. And I was 22 and it felt like a miracle to know someone. And she's
everywhere.
Yeah. And she's been one of my closest friends my whole life. It bonds you so deeply. And she carried the secret on a lot longer than I did. I came out but she was still keeping a secret. Now she's sort of making her way out. But I will say keeping it a secret kept me from realizing the communities that had formed.
Yeah.
And so I found We Are Donor Conceived really late in life. The first Google search led me to this horrible group, but I didn't know it was horrible. I didn't know anything.
And I didn't either. Cause I was in that one as well first too.
Really painful stuff happened in that for me. That set me back actually.
Shit.
And so it took me a long time before I ventured out again to even sort of realize there was something better run by donor conceived people. And somehow I found We Are Donor Conceived. I don't even remember how. I remember ordering Erin's first issue of the magazine she'd put together. And I've never experienced this ever in my life where it like I couldn't physically read it because I was so emotional. Like I could make it through like a paragraph, and then I would my whole body would be like shaking on fire, but happy. It was like, I was happy. And I was also so devastated that I had spent so many years thinking I was really alone and how weird my particular story is, only to open up a magazine filled with quote unquote weird stories, sometimes exactly like mine. And that feeling is, I'm going to like cry thinking about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm crying on your podcast like 10 minutes in.
I love it. I think that was a record, actually. It's 20 minutes, so you're okay.
Oh, good. Um, yeah, it's the most amazing feeling and it changed my life.
Yeah. It's something that I tell everybody that I'm like, look, your donor conception means whatever it is to you, whatever, however you want to handle this, like it's up to you. But I was like, I really always stress to people that I'm like, just try connecting to the community. I'm like, if you find
Yeah.
out it's not for you, that's totally okay. But I'm like, I'm telling you, just try for a little bit. I would have like by the time I found We Are Donor Conceived and like I found like the online communities, I was 30. And I had no idea that I had shit to heal. And then once I got
Yeah.
in the groups, I was like, I remember at first I was very defensive because I was like, there's a lot of people complaining in here. Like, I don't get it. Like, what's wrong? And then after a while, I'm like, Laura, maybe the reason you're being defensive is because like this is kind of tapping on some shit that you never thought of. And then I was like, oh, I have some unpacking to do, don't I? And
Wow.
it healed stuff in me that I didn't realize I even needed to heal.
I've had that experience with other things in my life where you're like, I'm fine. And then you hit against something, you're like, oh no. And that community, Facebook actually, so I only have a Facebook account to be a part of that community. I don't have any friends. I'm just in this group and I won't get rid of my account because the group means so much to me. But
Oh, yeah.
Facebook started this new feature that's phenomenal, which is that you can post in a group anonymously. And I
Yep.
cannot think of a better group that feature could. I can see that going awry in a lot of groups, but in the We Are Donor Conceived group, it allows you to still, if you are not ready yet to be out, it allows you to
Yeah.
still be a part of the community and be and talk to people without feeling exposed.
Absolutely. And I love how like, the majority of our community is like, we want to ban anonymity, but it's like, thank God we can anonymously post. But
Well, listen, if I want to ban anonymity when it comes to creating human life, but I think one message post can be anonymous until you're
oh
ready.
God, yeah, yeah. Well, a message post doesn't create a human, so rock
You
it out.
know, it
Man.
doesn't.
But yeah, no, it's these
Unless
groups.
it's like a really sexy message post and someone sees it and they're like, oh my God, I got to talk to them.
I got it. I'm kind of simping for this post. But no, I mean, the connection to the community has been life-saving in a way that I had no idea that I needed. Um,
Yeah.
so you, because like, and I agree with you, like I connected a lot later. So you found out in when you were 14 years old, and
Yeah.
I love the story of how you found out. Is really interesting. Would you mind sharing it?
Yeah. I was in the kitchen of this house we were in for just it's so funny. I know how old I was because we were only in this one house for like 6 months.
Mhm.
And so like, I'm like, okay, I know I was 14 because for a while I was like, yeah, when did that happen? Because it's so foggy. I know I was in the kitchen and I was complaining about my dad, who I thought was my dad. And I don't even remember what I was complaining about, but it was something probably like how he forgot my birthday again, or he hasn't talked to me in years, or wouldn't pay child support, or whatever it was. And my mom goes, well, thank God he's not your real dad anyway. And I go, what? And
Okay,
she goes,
Mom.
what? And I said, what? She was like, what? And my mom had told me once before, apparently, when they first divorced, which is when I was like 4 or 5. And apparently I took it great because I had I mean, I have no memory of this, but in my mom's heart, she was like, I let her know. She seemed good with it. She went to play with a duck in the park. Like she's 4. Um, and so, and now it kind of like, we need the information. We need children's books that you read to your child over and over and over and over again.
Yeah,
I also think my mom was battling something that I know was there, even though we've only touched on it a little bit, which is that by that time she had remarried this stepdad of mine who they would later divorce. But in that moment, she was already remarried and he was like gonna adopt me. And I had already taken his last name by the time I'm in like first or second grade. And so I think there was also a little bit of like, there's another man in the house and he wants to be your dad. And we're just going to kind of move in that direction.
yeah. Unfortunately, donor conception does come out usually around divorce. Is usually
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard of cases where it's been brought up for child custody because it was like, well, you're not their real dad anyway, so I should get full custody. Or you never loved those kids because you were not their biological mother. And like that's happened. So it
God.
yeah.
Do you need help finding your biological parents? Whether you're donor conceived, adopted, or an NPE, please contact DNA Angels. DNA Angels is a nonprofit team of genetic genealogists that help you identify your biological parents. And this group is run by donor conceived people, adoptees, and NPEs, so they will emotionally have your back during this process. DNA Angels has identified almost 5,000 biological parents since 2019 using test results from Ancestry DNA. And they are a nonprofit because they believe that your financial situation should not stop you from identifying your family. If you are searching to identify and possibly connect with your biological donor or missing parent, please reach out to dnangels.org. Must be at least 14 to apply, have tested at Ancestry, and presumed parents born in the United States of America.
Yeah, they don't do studies on us because
They can't find us.
because they can't track us because how many of us don't even know our donor conceived?
Oh my God. Don't know we're donor conceived, aren't admitting it, are told not to admit it. I think it's really interesting looking at the numbers in our communities compared with the actual data, which I believe again, we're guessing, an estimated 30 to 60,000 kids were created via insemination every year in the 80s.
Mhm.
And so that's a lot of people.
I mean, I've heard like sort of thrown around that like it easily, I mean, like we're talking like under like the lowest amount that in the United States, there's at least 1 million donor conceived people. Because also, I mean, we have also everything that's not done through the industry as well.
Yeah. Yo,
Added to it.
God, you're right. And especially now with the
The goddamn
Facebook
serial
groups
donors.
and the serial donors. Yeah.
They are a fun flavor, aren't they?
They haunt my nightmares. And the fact that one
Yeah.
of them is on 90 Day Fiance, nothing
Right.
fits more. And that's a show I love, and he's ruining it for me. Ruining it.
Oh yeah. I mean there is I will say I mean I am terrified of Reddit. Reddit is like not where I'll go, but Reddit right now is like taking it to task to figure out.
Really? Ooh.
Oh, you
I'm gonna
go
go find it.
Reddit is right now like they have decided to make this entire donor their entire life and just be like, let us figure out every single thing about this guy. And I even said on my TikTok, if anyone, Kyle Gordy, you've all heard me mention him on my TikTok. I even said before 90 Day Fiance aired, I was like, I don't know what idiot juice you drank to think this was going to
Yeah.
be a good idea because this is literally a fan base. They dig. That's what they do. They dig and they find shit out. And you know the messy paper trail you have left. They're gonna find it out.
Experts. And really, my heart just breaks for all the kids. All the kids who are gonna see it on TV, who will read in the Reddit archives one day.
Yeah.
The person that created them. I think that's so traumatic. I also want to flag something that I did not see being talked about enough, and maybe you covered it. Do you watch Love is Blind?
No, I don't. The only reality show I watch is RuPaul's Drag Race, but I will.
That's the best one by far, and that is church religion. Okay, so Love is Blind a couple seasons ago had this woman on named Nancy Rodriguez,
Oh,
and
I heard about this. Yes.
yeah, she's like in the pods, and she's like, one thing to let you know before we get married is that I have donated my eggs 8 times and could potentially have 25 children out there. And then just to the side in a different storyline, she's like a made from nothing real estate mogul and owns 9 buildings. And I'm watching it going, yes, I know what funds built this business.
I know what your little egg fund was.
Yes, and I know what this is. And, she struck me as someone who might be on the better side of a donor to find someone who's open to it, who knew about it, and yet, do you want to watch your biological mother's season of Love is Blind? Where she leaves the altar crying and dates a idiot named Bartice? It was tough.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was tough to see that being so cavalier. Lala Kent putting out so much misinformation via Vanderpump Rules.
Yeah.
it's wild to see the way these stories are being portrayed, even in reality TV.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, donor conception, I mean, it is still such a joke in entertainment, in Hollywood and everything. And it's like, look, I think it's fucking funny too. I do. But you all are continuing to push a false narrative, a dangerous narrative. And I'm like, it can be funny. I agree with you. I have a lot of stand up about it. It's fucking hysterical. But
Yeah.
but it's the fact that you all are continuing to push archaic agendas of a multi-billion-dollar industry that profits off of the creation of human beings is like, when is the self-awareness train going to click in? We've done this, we've seen this, we know what happens, and you all are going to get 10, 15, 20 years from now going, oh shit, maybe those jokes were like slightly off taste.
Yeah. Also, I mean, there's some actual like comedy, I guess I'm gonna call them rules, but it's like built into the art of satire is that the joke punchline has to be on the person in power who's abusing that power. It
Yep.
cannot be satire if, I mean, it just can't, it is functionally not satire when it's punching down. And so it's like, yeah, it's very funny. Make sure you're punching in the right direction. And they never are. They're always like, who's the dad? Like, you know.
I guess it was a sperm donor, but
Mm.
that's the thing. People don't look at making fun of it as punching down because they don't consider us a community. They don't consider us victims. They knowledge base on what is to be donor conceived, the systemic issues that exist are something that 99% of people don't understand. Now,
Yeah, but I think that's key because at least in my little experience is like I think it's they don't understand and they don't know. But
yeah,
a lot of people who once they do know,
yeah,
I do see them change their mind. They're just like, "Oh, I just
I
really
agree.
I'd never conceived of that reality."
I always like, I get asked, like, how do you convince so many people that there's issues? And I'm like, one, I always start with fertility fraud. I'm like, that's how you get people. You have to start with the low hanging fruit, which is fucking fertility fraud. You break down what fertility fraud is, how many doctors have gotten away with it. And then you always end with, so if that is true, now imagine what else is true. And then you see
Yeah.
their eyes widen and go, oh shit. And I'm like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then
Absolutely.
let's go from there. Then, like, yeah, let's talk about sibling pod size. Let's talk about medical issues. Let's talk about the racism, the eugenics, and all that fucking awful bullshit.
Yeah.
So you found out that when you were 14 years old and you didn't already have a great relationship with your father. And I do
Yeah.
like how you have renamed your father in the book to Limoncello. I think
That's
that's
right.
fucking hysterical.
Thank you so much.
And so did you ever talk to Limoncello about being donor conceived? Did you ever bring it up with him and being like, yo, mom told me?
You know, it's so interesting. Cuz I journaled a lot as a kid. It's the greatest gift I've ever given myself. And when I say I journaled a lot, I mean the amount I was journaling as a child should have put me in a mental institution. Like you should have seen what I was doing and you would have been like, put lock her away. We're not sure. There's like a manifesto happening. Like
No,
I
that
have
is a Jon Stewart, the problem prodigy head writer right there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yes, rebrand it. No, you're right. I mean, I have so many journals. And in writing a memoir, I was able to fact check so much. I mean, it was just written down
Oh,
multiple times with lots of magazine clippings. Sometimes I drew art. Like, I really had it all written down. And in my memory, I never confronted him about it because I took a trip specifically to try and repair our relationship when I was 16 years old. And at that point, I'd known for 2 years. They'd been divorced for 12 years. I'd seen him maybe like 5 or 6 times in my entire life.
jeez.
And I'd had some pretty horrible memories and events with him already. And at 16, I take this trip to be like, oh, now that I know that I'm donor conceived, now I realize why we've had such a horrific relationship. And listen, I have no idea if this is the science of donor conception or not, but I came out of the womb being like, fuck you. Like as a baby, I was like, no, I hate you. And he was like, okay, I hate you too. Like he was also extremely abusive to my mom. And there are studies that say that like when a woman is pregnant and a man is physically abusive, there are like hormones and chemicals going into that child, the fetus, the child who comes out going like, my mom is in danger, like from you. Like I need to make sure my mom is okay. My mom is okay. And that's always how I was. Like I would scream if she
Wow.
left the room. I would just be like, is my mom okay? And I don't want you around me. And that was our relationship. And he also was like, you're really fat and tall and loud, and I hate that. I want a tiny lady. And I was like, well, should have used your own sperm, motherfucker, because he is a very small person, and so physically and emotionally. And so I take this trip thinking like, oh, now I know what the reason is. I'm gonna mend our relationship. Why would I want that? I don't know. I was 16. I think
You
I
were
like,
16. I mean, but that's always what happens. You with parents, they
yeah.
always are held in that kind of high regard.
Oh yeah. I just for some reason I wanted his approval. I wanted him
Yeah,
to love me.
of course.
I wanted to be like, oh, we can right this wrong.
Mhm.
And I take this trip, and the trip goes so terribly. And there's a story in my book, and I won't tell it on your podcast because it'll get gross and weird. But there's this thing that happens between us that it's just like, no, we never spoke about it face to face. And because it was just like there was too much other shit going on. And I write him a letter and tell him to like fuck off and die after that, and that I know he was abusive to my mom and he was always horrible to me, and I don't want him in my life. And we never spoke again
And you
because he knew he wasn't really my dad. So he was like, bye.
and you said that you, from best you know, you believe that Limoncello is living somewhere in Thailand.
That is right. He was a man who did not believe in the government, in taxes. We used to bury his money in jars in the backyard because all banks are spies.
Okay, speaking of that, I need you to, because there is something that you do talk about in this book, that he taught you that the world was made by alien dolphins.
That's correct. Yeah.
I need this biblical alien dolphin origin story. I need this so hard.
So he was intensely spiritual. And I now know that he and my mom were a part of what I think it was a cult.
It sounds a little quacks like a duck. It's a cult.
It was run by the man who was best friends with Ron Hubbard. So I think we can draw some conclusions.
I believe.
And
you, man.
yeah, so he had a lot of intense beliefs, and it was a mixed with a lot of cultural beliefs he had as well. And I remember him being like, the earth was created by dolphins, but they were from outer it's really hard to repeat that. They were from outer space.
Outer
And
space alien dolphins. I love this.
this was also tied to my mom being a dark light in the world. And I was a bright light and he was a white light, but dark lights were going to be like snuffed out by the universe. Anyways, all of this makes sense later when I find this fucking poem he sent me when I was 11. And when I was writing the book and going back through my journals, I find this poem that he had made me memorize. And the poem's garbage. It's like leaves or the wind and the river. Like, it's so stupid. And I was like, oh God, this poem. And he was making me memorize it in exchange for dance lessons. And he paid for 2 of them. And then I had to drop out. Pretty cool. Anyways, I turned the piece of paper over, and it's been pulled out of a Scientology book because the backside has Scientology stuff on it. And that's when I was like, okay, so like alien dolphins, I do believe that is what you learn when you get to the highest level of Scientology. You know, when you like climb all the levels and then you basically read a shitty sci-fi book written by Ron Hubbard about how the earth was created. I think it's a piece of that.
It's okay. Oh my
But
God.
anyways, pretty cool.
Pretty
He's
cool.
a cool guy.
I love. Oh my God. I haven't heard Alien Dolphins yet. That was a new one.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I love it. Now, are these good dolphins? Are these like, we like these dolphins? Are these dolphins like considered spiritual beings?
Yeah, I think it was like thumbs up on the dolphins.
Okay.
You know, like the ocean is magical. I think a lot of that stuff. Here's where I'll make a joke. Sometimes God says certain people shouldn't have kids. And then they find a way to anyway. And that was limoncello for me. It's like that man wasn't supposed to have children to raise.
Yeah. Well, he seems to be really into it.
Really into it, and he still is, like, apparently, and I only know this from another family member, that he is fully like, do you know Hillary Clinton like drank baby's blood and that's why she lost the election? Like 100% for reals believes that, and is like, anyways, gotta go, I live in Thailand now, click.
Okay, so we're like fully into like Pizzagate shit.
Full Pizzagate, probably. I'm sure he was like, let me ride up on my Harley, which he owns, and help. That's who he is. If I saw footage of him at the insurrection, I'd be like, that seems right.
There is Limoncello.
There he is.
Riding in on that dolphin.
Except, you know what? He doesn't believe in the government. So I don't think he'd show up to the White House. I think he'd be like, this is all a figment of our imagination. We can manifest our way out of it or something.
Well, good for him. Bless his heart.
Everyone listening right now is like, I'm sorry, who raised you?
And that is how you end up as the head writer for fucking Jon Stewart. Okay, everyone, take lessons now. Oh, I love it. I again, my little dark sense of humor is like, this is awesome. Okay. So now I'd love to talk to you also about the complexities, if you're okay, about your newfound ethnicity, because this is a really complicated subject for donor conceived people.
Yeah.
Would you mind kind of like giving a backstory on, the ethnicity of your donor and all that kind of jazz?
Yes. So Limoncello is Mohican and Choctaw and Scottish. And he really identified with his native identity. It was a big part of his life. And also just physically, he had more olive skin. His hair was jet black. His eyes were jet black. My mom, a tall, blonde, thin, blue-eyed Swedish lady. And so in order to have me look like him, and possibly be his daughter, because, obviously this was, they weren't going to tell anybody.
Yeah. We must hide the secret.
Yeah. My mom was like, do you have any native donors? And I don't know if this is exact dialogue, but I imagine it went like this. LOL, no, we're based in eugenics.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, no, they would be like, oh, no. We're specifically trying to not actually.
Yeah, actually, specifically, we don't like that.
Yeah, no, we're very much into the ex-nay white supremacy kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And there's another part of the story that I'm not going to tell because it's not mine to tell. And one day I will, but the doctor is like, no, but we do have a lot of Hispanic medical students at the university, and we'll use one of them because we'll find someone who has dark hair that matches your husband and dark eyes. And he was, anyways. And so
I love how they're like Native American, Hispanic.
It's okay.
That'll work.
It's really interesting too, of just like no one gave a fuck about my identity. Just nobody.
Nobody.
And I also think like, that's how identity was often or could be talked about and thought about back then, surely by these medical doctors who were already being fraudulent, 100%. Selfish, just research assholes. And so,
the giant masturbatorium that is the fertility industry.
Yeah.
At that point. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually think like her doctors were pretty kind and cool to even like make that happen. Like that was actually maybe like on the good scale of who she could have had doing the inseminating. And so, but yeah, I grew up for 14 years believing I was Limoncello's daughter and that all of that identity and cultural making, which was a big part of his life, was mine. And so to find out that that was a lie was horrible. And to find out I was actually from a Hispanic sperm donor was both a mind fuck and also I hated him so much. It was kind of a positive thing where I was like, I got to just fantasize about, oh, I'm not fucking related to you anyway, bitch, and really when we were estranged, it's like, it was just nice. It was nice to not be related to him, to be honest. Like it was great. And, but identity is complicated, especially when you're a fucking donor kid. There's, as I said in the book, there's not TED Talks, there's not research papers. I work with a trauma therapist who specializes in identity. I have for many years, specifically because of this. And she's like, she's trying to find research to help me. And she has to go to the adoptee community. Yeah, exactly. And so it's really hard to navigate that as a child, as a teenager, as an adult.
Yeah.
And I've been navigating it my whole life. And it's very hard. And I do feel very angry about it.
I think that so many of us have had identity stripped away from us. And I mean, some like for me, finding my new identity has been really, really healing. And I'm very, very grateful for that. But there are obviously like you and many other people where it's been extraordinarily traumatizing.
Yeah.
You find out you're a different ethnicity. You find out you're a different race.
Well, no.
Well, I was
Hispanic is not a race.
Well, no. I bet other donor conceived people have found out they're a different race.
Yes.
Sorry, not
Oh,
you.
yes.
I
Oh,
apologize.
other people. Yes. No.
all right,
Actually, let's restate that. You say that again, and I won't
Oh, yeah.
interrupt you.
But like there are other donor conceived people who have obviously had something more similar to you, where finding out they're a different ethnicity extremely traumatizing, and there are donor conceived people who have found out they're a different race.
Yeah.
And it's a mind fuck. And you
It really is. And I most of my life was like, not that I specifically thought I'm the only one. I just thought I was keeping it a secret. And to find out there's groups about this, there's communities, there's people, and it's just so many of us. And again, it's this thing that is horrible, but is so healing to know you're not alone.
It honestly, it's and donor conceived people trauma bond hard because I feel like there's like a secret language we all speak that I can't explain to anybody else. But you get us in a room together and you will think that we've been best friends for 20 years.
I completely agree. And I've never felt more safe and whole than I have when I've been with other donor conceived people.
Absolutely. And it was when we held the protest in New Orleans, it was like the first time like so many of us were together and meeting each other for the first time in person. And the protest was great. That felt really good. We were really proud of that. But what all of us said was the thing that really affected us was how emotionally impactful it was to just be there together supporting each other. And it was like we have known each other our entire lives.
Yeah.
And that was healing of just going, I finally found community. This is the community I've always been in. Like, this is my home.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, it's always like that kind of argument that we always sort of get in is like, does DNA matter, chosen family, all that stuff. And all that. And it is complicated. And I feel like donor conceived people in particularly have a really interesting perspective on it. But I feel like the donor conceived community is like, we are our chosen family. Like, we are a family.
I love looking at it like that. Yeah, absolutely.
But like one of the things that you said was you had a hard time deciding, like, whenever you've had to like choose like your ethnicity, like on a form, you've had a really hard time. I literally had to do that the other day. And I'm like, what do I do?
What do I do? I know it's so interesting too, because so much of ethnicity is your lived cultural experience. And as donor kids, we don't have that. And so I try and be really respectful of people who do have that lived cultural experience and not taking up space in those spaces while also being proud of who I am and being who I am. And it's just like a really fucking shitty line to walk, especially when you're just like trying to take a COVID test and the COVID test is like, who are you, you dumb bitch? And you're like, I wish I had a dad. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so, yeah, it has been really painful. And I just try and work through it all the time. Other times I don't feel it at all. You know what I mean? And it's fine. But like, yeah, it's interesting. It's like that book, that children's book where the duck walks around and he's like, are you my mom? Like, are you my mom? And so it's just the most human quality to want to know where you came from and who you are and who's your dad and who's your mom. And then when you're someone like me and it's like, I've had 3 dads, I'm so good on them. You know what I mean? But
You're
I do
dadded out a bit.
I'm dadded out. And so it's this weird thing where it's like, I actually don't give a fuck about him. I don't care who he is, but I really care who I am. I want to know who I am. And that matters to me.
Have you started exploring your new ethnicity? Have you started kind of like venturing down that path?
I guess no, yes, no. I mean, yes from the jump, but also like, hold on, let me see if
Well, you took a DNA test, right?
Oh yes, I took a DNA test.
So do you know like specifically where your ethnicity comes from?
Yes, I do. And it is actually more than half Hispanic because DNA is funny like that.
DNA is
But
fucking funny.
but what's really interesting and complicated, and it's like, I just wish I'm a comedian. Okay. I need someone else to tell me the answers. But from everything I know, it's like there is so much, especially with Spaniards and colonization and slavery and the way the migration has happened, that yes, I know my DNA. And also like, do I? Specifically because it's Hispanic Latina DNA. And the other thing, and I'm curious if you know this, so it's like and maybe you'll be like, yeah, duh, bitch, but you know, when I
say it just like that.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I went to really start researching DNA testing and found out that like to really know your paternal line, you need a Y chromosome because that's what those markers are in the ancestry sites, the 23 sites, and we don't have it, obviously. And so in the fine print, they'll be like, have a male relative test if you really want to know. And it's like, okay, I'm donor conceived. I can't. And so I was like, so then
that's a cruel fucking joke, asshole.
Yeah. And so then I was just like, what? So then how are you giving the results? What do you mean? What do you mean? And it turns out they're guessing. And obviously all science has guessing to it. You get all the data you can, but when you're doing DNA testing, you are they're doing comparison analysis, which means they can only compare you to the rest of the people in the pool. And tests like Ancestry and 23andMe are mostly white Americans and Europeans coming in to be like, does my great granddad own a castle in Ireland? Which is sick. I wish I had that.
Right.
But they're doing like, oh, your DNA kind of looks like this person. So when you do the little slider of accuracy, it goes to, whoops, we actually have no idea when you want it to be 100% accurate because, and I think people really think of DNA as like, it is what it is, the end. And like, no, dog. Like, not only that, but like who's doing the cartography with migration, slavery, colonization, global, weather patterns. Who drew the line and said, this is Russia during these years for this DNA? Who's making those decisions? Well, at ancestry.com, it's Mormons. Now, do you want Mormon scientists doing your DNA and telling you who you are? And so I want to acknowledge
nothing like a good old Mormon science.
I mean, come on. Like Family Search is literally owned by the LDS Church.
I want dolphin alien science.
That's so that's what leading me to say a dolphin alien actually did my DNA testing. So I just want to acknowledge that there's like a lot of nuance and a lot of complexities to this. And I think people should be aware of that. And also having such little information in my life, my DNA test is very important to me. I did admixture testing, which is a different type of testing, where they have like samples from people all over the world. And it's a more like, for me, I guess, listen, I'm a comedian. I don't know how to explain this. It felt more scientific, felt more accurate. And yeah.
So you still have not found the donor?
No, I went down that path for a while. I found like all the yearbooks of the medical students.
Like a classic DCP is going through goddamn medical yearbooks. Yep.
And also like,
we are so predictable.
And what idiot was I to think I was going to see my face? Not only does that feel kind of impossible, but I look exactly like my mom. It looks like you took a bicycle pump to my mom and gave it like 2 pumps and like, that's my face, gave it different coloring. It's me. Like there's no world in which I could even look for another feature because I look exactly like my mom. No, so I especially couldn't do it.
I look like my mom, just throw on like some Ashkenazi jeans.
Yeah. And you're just like, yeah. So I don't know what I was thinking, but yeah. So, but I got down to like writing letters and I was really having a horrible, traumatized time with it because every time I found more things out, it hurt. Like, oh, maybe he wasn't a med student at all, or I was created for $25. Stuff like that felt like a lot to take on. And then it occurred to me that he could be dead. And for some reason I was like devastated by that. And with my therapist, I decided like, I'm just going to pause until I know I can survive the worst case scenario. Because in this moment, and if you read my book, I've had enough horrible things happen. I've had an amount of things that happen that is just like, I'm a writer and I read my own story and I go, too much. That's too much. Who believes that? Like, it's too much. And
you kind of, like, if you were pitching this in the writer's room and everyone were like, let's make something a little bit more believable. Like,
exactly. It's like, this isn't a soap opera. Yeah. And so, and I have CPTSD and I have some mental health struggles and Look at us. Yeah. And so I really felt like I need to know I'm going to be able to survive the worst case scenario,
I think
because
that's smart.
in our world, the worst case scenario is high. It feels high. Everything from like, if he doesn't want to talk to me, if he's going to be shitty to me, if he threatens to sue me, if he's already dead, if he's a rapist, if I have 100 siblings, if he voted for Trump, what will I do?
I
And
voted
so
Trump. It's not, it's,
I can't.
I
And
can't. I was
God
so,
bless you, Laura, but I am in this place where I am like, life has been so hard. I want to know who I am. I have had
yeah.
really weird medical shit happen. So I think I know that side. I have my DNA test. I have what my mom has told me. I have my, other parts of my family history. I think I know who I am. I've lived this life. I know who I am. And if I ever want to know who he is, I will.
I think that's fair. And that's always the thing that it's, I always tell donor conceived people that it's like, please do not do something until you're emotionally ready. It's always going to
Yeah.
be there. It's always going to be like the answer will be available. I'm like, and obviously, whether or not you choose to look or don't look, the truth is whatever it is there. But once you click on that DNA matching button, there is no going back. You will
Yeah.
have that information. And sometimes that information can be empowering. Sometimes it's overwhelming. And sometimes it can lead to sad information.
Yeah.
And it sucks. And you got to be ready for whatever that fucking answer is. And mine was my donor is a real racist piece of shit. And yeah, I found him on Facebook and I was like, oh, these posts do not pass the vibe check. And I'm really, this is sad. This is not a fun experience.
I mean, imagine I find my donor and he's like, did you know the world was created by alien dolphins? I'll be like, oh my God. It's such a dark world. It's really painful. I'm trying to just get okay with being out in a very public way. I'm trying to really use my voice like you are to shine a light on our stuff. And that being
Yeah.
said, like this book, your podcast, like my own podcast, like I still feel like humiliation. I still feel sick about it. And I've just learned to deal with those feelings better, but it's not fun. It's like, it's fucking weird. And sometimes I just want to go back to not thinking about it and not ever finding out,
I think that's understandable and legitimate. But the thing that I really appreciate though, and I think obviously this comes so much from your incredible training and your amazing career, is you are expressing that and you're saying this is hard, this is uncomfortable. And I do find it to be so interesting that you have the job that you do. Like you are trained to be vulnerable, you're trained to be authentic, but this is for whatever reason is striking you as like, oh God, this is really hard to unpack.
Yeah. And
And
also I would say I was trained to be funny and I was trained to write jokes. And but there's a different type of, most of my comedy, most of my life was really just to be funny. I did not let the darkness in. So like I had this piece I used to do at the Second City like 10 years ago where I would try and find my dad in the audience every night. And I would go in the audience and I would interview guys to see if they could be my dad because I was trying to find my real dad. I didn't tell people I was donor conceived. I
yeah,
wasn't out, but I did tell people that I didn't know who my dad was. And I would just do it for the laughs. Whereas now I'm including the pain. And that's so much harder. At least for me, it's so much easier to just be fun and have fun and make jokes and be a fun fucking comedy lady. And then it started psychologically killing me. And I had severe mental health stuff. And I tried everything to fix myself, from tarot to crystals to therapists. And courage was my last
wait,
option.
which crystals did you pick? Because I'm wearing a few right now.
Oh, hilarious. I'm
Yeah.
sure all of them. A good old rose quartz to try and find a man, like whatever.
Yeah, nope, got the rose quartz.
Yeah.
Self-love and healing.
That's right. That's
Mhm.
right. Yeah, I did it all. And finally, just not running away from who I was.
Yeah.
Was the answer. And even though I still feel often bad and physically still have, I still have panic attacks for no reason. I still feel ashamed of myself. I still feel humiliated to exist in this world. The way I feel now is 1,000 times better than how I used to feel, which lets me know I'm going to feel even better in a few years. And that is because I'm owning my story and being who I am and being okay with it and stripping
100%.
away the shame that was unfairly put onto me.
I mean, I do feel like, I mean, I know this feels like so minuscule, but I do feel like it is important that to say that it is not your burden to carry that shame.
Yeah.
It was never anyone's burden to carry that shame. That was manufactured shame for no reason.
Yeah.
And that is not that is something that I hope that, in the future I can, we can talk again and you'd be like, "Laura, I put the shame down. I buried at the beach. I drank a margarita and I said goodbye to it."
Yeah.
Because you have nothing to feel ashamed about. You have
Yeah.
nothing. There is nothing. And I'm so sorry that that has been carved into your psyche and you have to do the work to fix that. And I'm so sorry that that was put on you.
You are Robin Williams. I am Matt Damon. Um,
It's not your fault.
I know, yeah, it's so ridiculous because you hear that, you know that, you're like, yeah, and then someone who is donor conceived says it to your face via a Zoom, and now I'm like crying again. It's like, and it's like, it's like, yes, I know, and yet, somewhere in your cells, I think just carrying a secret when you're young
Yeah.
psychologically changes you, and it's a lot of work to undo it. And you know what? I want to say this, like when I'm not on a podcast directly talking about being donor conceived, I feel great. I'm doing good. But it's when I go and face it though, where I go, oh, thank God I'm on meds.
Yeah, we love an Alexa Pro. Whatever.
That's right. That's right.
We love it. Thank goodness for the prescription pad. And I mean, I love this quote that you had about like they never thought about what the secret would do to us, the kids, the product. And I feel like that again, if we want to talk about encapsulating quotes, is we are not treated as sentient beings. We are absolutely treated as products, and products are not allowed to have emotions, certainly not negative ones. And when we start expressing negative emotions, it's like we're treated like the doll that was stepped on, that's broken, that the voice box suddenly is like, what the fuck is that weird noise?
Yeah, and I would recommend everyone read You Should Be Grateful by Angela Tucker. She's an adoptee, and yet everything in the book spoke so deeply to me. I actually have a tattoo of something she wrote in her book.
What
And
is
she's
it?
and she's a friend of mine. Oh, this is the place. It's so funny. Whenever someone asks me what it is, I'm like, nothing or whatever. But here, I want to actually share it on this podcast. It's the first line of a poem, and I'll read the whole poem to you. Uh, Yesterday, upon the stair, I met a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. Oh, how I wish he'd go away.
Oh, motherfucker. Okay. You know?
Isn't
Ooh,
it so good? And it's just this
yeah.
old poem, and she put it in her book, and she was like, a lot of adoptees will relate to this, and we've spoken about how similar our communities are, and she does so much work for both communities, and I was said,
Yeah.
tattoo that on my body, yes.
Yeah. Oh, that is gonna be permanently there.
Hmm.
Oh, that hits you. That's gonna Oh, wow, that visual I now have in my head, I'm gonna be carrying that around all day. Okay, yeah. Donor conceived people, you still with me? We go get your glass of water for that one. Oh, oh, man.
Glass of water, vat of wine,
That of
whatever you
wine.
need, whatever you need.
I mean, it's currently 5:16 PM right now, so
It's time.
we are 100%. Um And yeah, again, like I just want to kind of keep reading these quotes from your book and keep convincing people why they need to buy it. But like another one is the whole industry was built on a foundation of embarrassment that these parents felt over not being able to, quote unquote, have their own kids. It's something where I'm dropping a video today on it where we're saying that all of our parents who had infertility trauma got a kid thinking, well, this is the cure for the infertility trauma. And it's
That's
like,
right.
kids are not cures for infertility trauma. In fact, what ends up happening is if you have a kid, you haven't worked on the infertility trauma, you end up dumping the infertility trauma on the kid.
That's
And
right.
both
That's
adoptees
right.
and donor conceived people go like, yup, IVF conceived kids also are just like, yeah, no, we had a little bit of that one too.
Yeah, it's fascinating too because, let's say you have all these hopes, whether you are whoever you are as the parent who is gonna be, there's gonna be a donor in place of what you would have provided.
Yeah.
If you had these hopes of like, let's just say a daughter, let's pretend it's me and that your name is Limoncello, and you're like, I'm gonna have a daughter. She's gonna be like so sweet and cute and subtle. She's gonna trad wife, out the womb trad wife, and she's gonna be like so lovely and thin and small. And then this daughter comes out that's none of those things, none of what you wanted. And all you can start thinking about is, well, I didn't make her. This isn't me. This isn't the things I wanted. It must be the donor, or things maybe, that you can pretend to place quote unquote blame on other people. I was born with 12 toes.
I
12
love
toes.
that story. That
Yeah,
you
I
have
put it
12
I put it
toes?
in there as a joke, as a punchline. But yeah, I mean, imagine being like, we're using a donor. Oh, they told my mom they're medical students. They only donated 3 times. They were the top of their class. They had been through rigorous physical and mental testing. And then I come out with 12 toes, which is funny because my mom can trace her lineage for like she's Swedish. It's just Swedes on Swedes on Swedes on Swedes. They know the whole family line.
Yep.
Nobody had this. And so it very specifically felt like it came from
It
my
was like,
paternal
it
line.
was just like that 12 toes going like donor.
Yeah,
Donor.
exactly. Yeah. And I'm sure Limoncello, from the jump is like, God damn it. And I think those are
Mhm.
the types of things that you don't think about with fertility trauma, of like the
No.
tiny ways in which your child will disappoint you and then you will ruin their life by them picking up on that disappointment.
Oh, because it's a different kind of disappointment.
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked to recipient parents who were like, I know, and like, I would say a little bit more in tune recipient parents, who said like, I know this sounds stupid. I know this is dumb, but the fact that my kid looks so much like the donor took me by surprise. Like, I wasn't prepared for that. And they're like, and I know that's really dumb. I know I should have, but for some reason, I didn't really think of them actually adding DNA. I thought it was like, basically a missing part, but like so minuscule that it didn't even count.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Or their personality, their mental health, their genetic
yeah,
diseases.
mhm. It's in the lies in which I would say infertility trauma or desperation will help weave that fucking story for you. Because obviously not everybody who uses the fertility industry has like specifically infertility trauma. It just might be like I need this help. And that's something I've noticed with a lot of recipient parents is the story in which they tell themselves is not of reality. I mean, the
Yeah.
amount of recipient parents are like the donor isn't a biological parent. What are you talking about?
I know, it's so wild. It's so wild because
I
in
am
any,
just saying, convince them.
yeah,
Like, I'm a fucking comic. No.
it's, and when you do have your own trauma that you're bringing to it, yeah, you will give yourself a lie to feel better.
Yeah. Oh, I've had to convince donors that they're the biological parent. They're like, I'm not a biological parent. And I'm like, what?
It's
I
so
have
nuts.
the quotes saved. I'm gonna get them framed one day. Cause I'm like, this just is the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Wild. That's wild.
Oh yeah. And I'm like, and you were approved to be a donor. Like you
Yeah.
approved. And you don't understand that you're a biological parent. Like you were
I-
approved and they will take anybody. And I do love actually how you kind of like again highlight in this book where it's like, we have this idea that all these donors are like super prestigious and like, have gone through all this training and you're like, no. A lot of the donors were like that was not the case in the least
Some
bit.
guy. This is what I think about all the time. So you get a donor profile and you're like, blonde, blue-eyed,
Yep.
funny, smart. Okay, fine. Let's even pretend that that's true in any way. How many times have you been on a dating app and you're like, I want someone funny and smart? And there's a guy being like, I'm funny and smart. And then you meet him and he's the worst person in the world. He's the unfunniest motherfucker in the whole world. These men are self-identifying as fun, smart, compassionate, good at music, whatever. You wouldn't trust that on a dating app. You would know their line. You would know they're 5'9" when they say they're 6 foot. Like,
Yep.
but then you get a donor profile and you're like, yes, all of this is true.
All of it is true. Absolutely. Why on earth with this multi-billion-dollar industry that is really interested in my paycheck, really interested in my checkbook, lie about any of this? My favorite is some of the banks, you can also find out what the staff impression is of the donor. And I'm like, yeah, because they don't have like self-interest to sell you on this person, like that aunt who is like actively trying to be like, you have to meet this boy. He's the son of someone from my book club. He's a
Yeah.
doll.
Also, LOL to them even writing it. I'm a comedy writer, have been for many years. The amount of gigs I have taken on just to make ends meet. I had a friend recently who took on a gig that she would get $100 for every 100 reviews she wrote for this product.
Love
And I
it.
even said, why aren't they using AI? And she's like, because you can tell they can feel off. So it's her writing the reviews. It's like, I don't even believe
Yep.
staff impressions are written by the staff.
No, I don't think
Even
so
if,
either.
even if I trusted your fucking opinion on my future child and I don't, like, how do I know you're a good person?
All I think about is like the staff impression is like when I was a bartender and I remember the floor manager being like, okay, everybody, when anyone asks you what your favorite dessert is, say it's orange sorbet because we have too much of it in the freezer.
You're so right. You're
we
so
gotta
right.
push it. And
Everyone's
I'm
like, push the idiot that was here earlier this
we
morning.
have
He
like
gave too much.
no one's buying his fucking shit. We have all of this storage of sperm. We need to get his sperm out to get new sperm in. Let's go.
Yeah.
I never understand, but it is when it comes to family building, it's just kind of all reason and common sense goes out the window because everybody's in such a desperate, traumatized state, which is again, should be your biggest red flag of maybe I should slow down.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
Okay. So my last thing that I'd like to talk to you about is you talk about in the book a very serious medical procedure that you had.
Yeah, I had a 7.5-pound dermoid tumor growing off of my right ovary that in the time that they went in, they thought it was cancerous and I was going to get a hysterectomy. It turned out to be benign and they took my right ovary.
Do you have any knowledge whatsoever if this was something that you were genetically predisposed to?
I do not. And I will say finding out what was going on with me was particularly hard because of being donor conceived. And all I know is my mom's maternal history, and that's not in it. And specifically with women, because they don't even study us in science. Talk about
Why?
science not caring about certain, right? Why would
Why would they do
bother?
that? Why? No.
Yeah. And so we're not
They're expendable.
exactly. We're barely studied, especially our reproductive health. They don't
Mhm.
even have they haven't even researched certain diseases that we know about.
Vessel works or don't work. We don't care.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
And so when you do have something like that I had going on, they really rely on what is in your family line to try and make these guesses of what could be happening to you. And
Mhm.
so it took them 12 hours of all kinds of different tests to eventually do an intravaginal sonogram, which is where it goes inside. And I heard the technician gasp. She goes,
Oh, that wouldn't terrify you in the least
exactly,
bit.
exactly. And I breezed right past it, but 7.5 pounds is the size of a Nerf ball.
Yeah, that's huge.
It's that could be a child. Some babies are born and they're 7 pounds. And so,
I mean, that's bigger than an ovary, certainly.
oh, an ovary's way smaller than that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, that's a few
ovaries are
ovaries.
very, very, that might be 14 ovaries. Like
Yeah.
it's massive. It was the biggest dermoid tumor New Mexico had ever seen at that time. An honor. And I found out I had it.
Guinness World Record who?
Exactly, right? And I found out I had it 3 days before my mom's third wedding. So I
Happy wedding.
totally ruined her wedding. And yes, going through it all, I really just thought about my donor all the fucking time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love when I was literally at the OBGYN 2 days ago talking about family medical history. I'm like, I'm a sperm donor, baby. I don't have half my fucking medical history. Like, you have to have that conversation every single time.
Absolutely. And a lot of people I find they'll be like, well, I don't have my medical history. And okay, well, you weren't made in a lab. Do you know how many forms you have to fill out to even like get a checkup? And they threw those away or never made them when it came to us. That's unbelievable.
I always get like, I always roll my eyes when like, well, I know my parents and I don't know my family medical history. I'm like, okay, would you know if your mom died of breast cancer? Would you know if your dad had a heart attack? Well, I guess, yeah. I'm like, that's fucking medical history.
That's your medical. It's like a piece of paper. Yeah. It's just like, I texted my mom. I said, hello, anybody ever have a tumor in your family?
And I mean, and it doesn't matter because she could be like, oh no, we don't have any in ours. And you're like, okay, well, And then this other blank half, as we said, that, you know, that man on the staircase, he ain't handing you your medical history.
Exactly.
All you see
Exactly.
is like his shoes, and that's it.
That's
And
right.
he is not offering anything, and it sucks, and it's awful knowing that, like, I just never am gonna have this.
Yeah.
And the fact that it is, and as you said, it was a lab. The fact that this wasn't an accident, this wasn't, holy shit, we're in a bad situation and we just need to make the best of it. This was, you are systematically separated from your medical history by a multi-billion-dollar industry. That is what the problem is. We're making problems that don't have to be problems.
That's exactly right. This is why you're the best, Laura, and why I love you as a voice in our community.
Okay, you have no idea, like, the fact that you're saying, okay, I won't lie. So like after the first time you and I Zoomed and stuff, and you were just like, by the way, like, I've been following you on social media. I called my manager and I was like, do you know who's been following me this entire time? And he was like, see, Laura, see, big names follow you, and they've
That's
been
right.
listening to you.
Oh, I'm a big name. Thank you.
You're a big name. I'm sorry, but like, what? Jon Stewart gives you a quote on the first page. That's a big fucking name. But yeah, Amber Ruffin also. Holy shit. Yeah, you're a big fucking name. So like, I totally was fangirling, going like, holy shit. I guess I really maybe should be careful as to what it's because
That's
this
so.
entire time I was just like, I'll just savor it.
Of course.
I'll just say it. But Chelsea, thank you. I know you got to run, but is there any last words you want to share?
Yeah, go follow me on Instagram where I mostly do fun stuff. I book club celebrity memoirs. I post fun stories. I have a podcast, Glamorous Trash, where we get real deep because, like I said, I've let in the vulnerability and the darkness and the light and my book. I shouldn't be telling you this. Go buy it. You know, apparently pre-orders are the only thing that matters to publishers. It determines if you ever get to write another book. So if we ever want to hear the sequel of how this story ends,
Yeah.
maybe
And
purchase
hey,
the first
guys,
one.
we're gonna support donor conceived people, and it is exceptionally funny. I will have the link to it in the caption. Because yeah, let's support members of our community because our stories need to be told, and the fact that we have a story in here in this book is so imperative, and we have to share it.
Thanks, Laura.
Chelsea, thank you for everything. And thank you for sharing your story. And I know it's dark on the other side of that door, but I promise your whole community is there, and we're all going to be there, and we're all rooting for you. And you are not alone, girl.
Thank you, Robin Williams.
It's not your fault. Not your fault.
I gotta go see About a Girl. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Have a lovely night.